Not too far back in time, if you'd mentioned that you'd spotted a gorilla, or maybe you were out at sea and you'd seen a giant squid, it's likely you'd have been laughed out of the building. However, time proved that these creatures existed, but at one point they were officially known as cryptids, creatures that people said they'd seen, but without any hard evidence, it was suggested that they probably didn't. For this video, we're going to be tracking down a cryptid that has been spotted across Calderdale and Kirklees for the last 20 years. Hey everybody, Matt back with you. Hope you're okay. Like Alice, I try to believe in 6 impossible things before breakfast. Cryptids are potentially impossible things, and people who say they've seen them often are subject to mockery and ridicule. Quite often they will report things they've seen and not give their name out. However, a lot of people do give their name out. There's 3 potential reasons for this. One is that they just want some publicity and their name to be seen. 2, it may well be they're just mistaken. They may have seen something, but it might not be quite what they're saying it is. Through the darkness, things might be seen differently. Or 3, they genuinely believe they've spotted something and reported it in the belief it's worth telling that story. Now, I've always had a fascination with cryptids. From a very young age, I had a book that I would read cover to cover about things like Yetis, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, Mothman. Always fascinated me that things like this have potentially been spotted and may exist, but I can't say for definite they do, and I'll keep my own beliefs for this story hidden as well, because it's up to you to decide what people have seen. And for this one, we're going back over 20 years to some sightings in Calderdale and Kirklees area of a potential big black cat. It's been seen in Shibden, in Huddersfield and in Todmorden. Let's tell you some of those stories from the locations. Keep an open mind and tell me what you think. So the furthest back in time I'm going for this particular video is 2005, 20 years at the time of recording. I could go further back, of course. There have been sightings of big cats for decades, but as I'm going to each location, it would be a video you'd probably never see released, or it could be 6 or 7 hours long. So we're focusing on just 3 or 4 kind of areas where there have been multiple sightings at one point. And we start today in Halifax, which is behind me here, but to get to the location I've got to climb one of the steepest hills in Halifax for about half a mile. I'm heading into the Shibden Valley. Okay, so our first location is now right behind us. If you don't recognise the area with things like the chimneys at the top there, I'm just above Shibden Hall, and the towers were part of Anne Walker's mines, I think. But it's not the mines we're going to. We're going further down into the trees and into a place called Cunnery Woods. So this is Cunnery Woods. next to Shibden Hall. Very nettly today. I'm so pleased I've got my shorts on. But our first reports come from here in August 2005. Two separate witnesses report a beast with glowing yellow eyes. So it wasn't until October 2005 that the reports made it into the local rag, the Halifax Courier. And what was quite surprising was they must have asked Calderdale Council for a response to the sightings, and their response was actually, I think, quite interesting, because I think you may expect them to go, no, it's absolute rubbish, there's no way that happened. But their response was that actually it is possible, or maybe even likely, that a cat was loose in the woods here. But they took the stance that whatever it was more likely to be an exotic version of a cat that had been let loose, possibly by an owner who couldn't look after it, or that it may have even escaped from somebody's house. But whatever it was more somebody's pet than just some kind of alien cat. But it was only a week after that that more sightings became known. So 1st of November, and a report comes through from a Geoffrey Horrocks Taylor, who has a field just 400 yards from here in the woods. And at 8:30 that morning, he is out in the field looking at the remains of a horribly mutilated sheep. And obviously he's probably seen mutilated sheep before, but he said this one had been kind of chewed down to the bone, and it must have been done so by something much bigger than even a dog, because of the amount of damage it had done. However, it's worth remembering that name for a moment, Geoffrey Horrocks Taylor, due to the next report. So now we are deep in the heart of the Shibden Valley. We're about a mile and a half, I think, from Shibden Hall. And it is a beautiful spot, and our next location is just ahead of me here. However, of all the ones we're covering today, for me, this is the one that's the most contentious. So this is Simm Carr Lane, and reported in March 2006, though apparently happened Christmas 2005. A David Horrocks Taylor is walking on here and sees a black cat that is the size of a dog, a big dog, and it's sat on a wall looking at him, and he decides to head home to get his camera and his binoculars and return. However, when he returns, it's not here. Now, if you've listened to that and gone, that name sounds familiar, there's a very good reason for it. The sheep attack on 1st of November, reported by a Geoffrey Horrocks Taylor. The cat sighting here on Simm Carr Lane, reported by a David Horrocks Taylor. I'm going to question what you might be thinking here, but I'm thinking probably the same as you, that these people are related, and it seems quite strange that within just a few weeks of each other, they are reporting sightings here. Again, I shouldn't question that. It could well be completely true. They may well have seen something, or one seen something and one seen the effects of an attack and thinking it's a cat. But these came almost, the first one immediately after the report in the Evening Courier. And yeah, I don't know. Is it possible that, the first one, Geoffrey, faced a bit of humiliation by announcing what he did, and therefore maybe this relation, if it is a relation, jumped in to also say he'd seen something? Was it all just a complete false reporting? They're just having a laugh, they're just reporting this because they'd seen the reports in Cunnery Wood? Or is it that both of them are completely true? I'll let you decide. But regardless, that was the end of the sightings here in the Shibden Valley, and it was half a decade later in an area called Lightcliffe that the next reports started to come in. Lightcliffe's story is a little bit different to all the others, and it was seen by Sean McGreedy, who was 19 years old, whilst he was walking. I don't know if it was on his street or a street nearby, but it's called Nunley Royd. Now, it is a residential street, so it's very different to the others, which have all been out in the fields or in the middle of nowhere. This was pretty much slap bang in the middle of a place. He also gave his name, and 19 at the time. His description is that it was a light brown, lean, muscular cat the size of a lynx. This was in May 2011, and naturally once this came out, many reports followed that very same month in Queensbury, Elland and Boothtown. Not going to those locations, but I will take you to Nunley Royd, but I thought I'd tell you the story from here rather than the residential street. If it's busy, I may not film there. Let's see what's there. So although I called it a residential place, it is. As you can see, it's a pretty much a leafy lane kind of suburb rather than modern housing. So let's see if we can find where we need to be. Right, so it's this one, Nunley Royd, and he's walking on here, heading that direction. Saw it at the end of the road here, possibly maybe on the grass on the left. What's frustrating in all the cases we're looking at today is the lack of any photographic evidence. My initial thought is, as these are in modern times, wouldn't somebody just have a mobile phone in their pocket? None of these images are really nearby, though this one is taken on a golf course in Huddersfield, apparently. But let's head to our next location and see what happened in Todmorden in 2021. February 2021, and the black cat sightings begin here in Todmorden, specifically this area known as Longfield. And a walker is out with his dog, and he describes a black panther-like creature larger than an Alsatian spotted ahead of him on his walk. The creature leaps up onto a wall and stares at him before running across the field. Best guess scenario, I'm going to suggest maybe the sightings took place here. This is still in Longfield. This is a road that a lot of people walk up with their dogs coming up from Todd Centre, and there is a wall where potentially the animal could have leapt up onto, and of course behind me is a field. It could have been at this side or it could have been at the other, but I'm going to say this side behind me purely because of the other sightings. There was another witness who said they saw a huge cat-like creature, and another one reported seeing a cat-like creature from their house. Now it could be from those houses there. They could have seen the cat going across the field. Again, it's just a guess, I don't know. And of course, did they see just a cat? Now, they were potentially, I think, the end of the sightings for Todmorden, and they all took place on one day, until someone else reported seeing a cat in Todmorden. Remember, 2021 in February was still in lockdown at the height of COVID, but in 2021, coming into Todmorden on a train is Gogglebox star Helen Worthington, and as she's on the train coming into Todd, she spots in a field a giant black cat from the window, and she's so confident she's seen it that she even mentions it on the programme. So most of the comments made about the cat sighting in Todmorden were anonymous, specifically those who'd said they'd seen it. Of course, when you've got a celebrity actually announces they've seen something in Todmorden, people take note. So for a little while it became news here in Todmorden that there was a black cat prowling the area. But regardless of the celebrity from Gogglebox seeing it, the sightings vanished just as quickly. But that brings us to 2025, specifically July 2025, where we are now at the time of filming, and a sighting that took place in Birchencliffe. Final stop on our big cat adventure is here, and I'm next to the roundabout at Ainley Top, and this area is called Birchencliffe, and the report from here comes from the 18th of July 2025. Yes, only 6 days ago was the time of recording, and it was a response somebody sent me before I even decided to do this video on big cats, and they'd come from Ainley Top, and through that gap in the fence there, now the cars were going pretty slow, Friday afternoon, and the viewer, I'll keep him anonymous for now, saw in this field big black cat, and his comments were he's already got cats and he's got dogs, and these were, whatever was in here, sorry, was bigger than a dog, and he was 100% sure on that. So again, we've got a brand new sighting right here from just a few days ago. So there we go, that is our 4 locations looking at the last 20 years and sightings of big cats. Deliberately chosen to just do those 4 years, if you like, because if you believe reports, there are something around 5,800 possible big cat sightings over the decades, and like I put at the beginning, that would take me the rest of my life to cover it. I'd quite like to move on to the next videos. But how do we actually conclude this? How do we sum it up? It's very hard, of course, when there is no physical evidence. There's no body of a cat anywhere. There's not really any photos other than that little clip from Huddersfield Golf Club, if it even is Huddersfield. So yeah, I'm going to take you to a place that might hold some answers for me. Could be wrong, but let's see what you think. And unfortunately, it is a pretty evil place. So this footpath would have once been trod by many workers on their way to a location just over to my left. And today it is ruined and long abandoned and reclaimed by nature. This rather extraordinary abandoned location is the former Elland Mink farm, and mink were bred in captivity here, and there are row after row of these kind of sheds, and although they're now completely overgrown with brambles and nature, inside them were row after row of cages. And so at the beginning of the year, the minks would be bred. They would then be separated into these separate cages, and then at the end of the year there was a mass slaughter. The minks would be killed and used for different things. The fur was used for clothing. Imagine mink stoles when there were fur around the collar, a fashion accessory of the 70s, I think. I think they could use the oil, and then what was left was kind of used for animal food. Absolutely reeked, and it was a barbaric practice. There's no escaping that. It wasn't right. I won't be moved on that. However, what happened 1997, I think, again, these would have been full, and activists came here and released the mink overnight. They were all suddenly released, but we were talking about hundreds and hundreds of an animal, and there was a little bit of a problem. This one's not just as bad. I might just be able to show you without getting stung or scratched to pieces. Here we are. Look, the cages are still here inside, and all these would have been full of mink, or at least maybe one in each one. Yeah, nearly 30 years these have just been left here. It's amazing how they've been reclaimed, and the trees just growing up and through the roof. So as well-meaning as it may have been, by releasing the mink there was suddenly a massive problem here in Elland and beyond, because the mink suddenly outnumbered everything else, and they were pretty vicious creatures, a mink, and they decimated the local wildlife and even attacked pets in gardens and killed dogs, and it was a pretty crazy time. And there were warnings put out, keep your animals inside, and there was an attempt to round up and exterminate as many of these minks as possible. But of course, naturally, some did still survive and thrive in the wild, although they're not often seen. So this is where I come to my conclusions. We know what a cat looks like. Now, I think minks are generally considered smaller than cats, so perhaps it's wrong to say this, but is it possible that so many minks were released in the wild here, although it's a long time ago? Are they still being seen? Could this be a creature that is spotted and not recognized as being a cat, and therefore regarded as something else? Fair enough, it doesn't quite fit into the panther or jaguar category, but it is one thought. So from here, up amongst the brambles of the abandoned mink farm, I will leave you. And yeah, it's very difficult to come to any further conclusions, because who am I to say what is real or not? Without that hard evidence, it is questionable, of course, but you can decide for yourselves. If I had to be pushed, I would say yes, people may be seeing something. I don't know if it's some kind of panther or jaguar or big cat. I certainly don't think it's an alien cat or anything like that, as might be suggested. But, you know, I do think people would genuinely say, I have seen something, because they have seen something. But the question is exactly what. But let me know your thoughts. Just be kind in the comments. It's absolutely fine if you think they exist or not. It's your choice. And some of you will already decided, just from seeing the title of this video, what your decision is. But I'd love to know. Okay guys, we will see you very soon for the next video. Take care.